Welcome to Nausea Reviews. This is Brian, your host. We're tackling The Howling. It's a movie that I probably should have saw when I was young, since it came out before I was born, but I never got around to it. I think it's because I thought it was more of a booby movie than it actually is, and for some reason I didn't want to get caught looking at boobs. Weird, right? But anyways, it's directed by Joe Dante, who's done quite a few things, but the ones that I've watched more than once, / maybe own one of them, is Piranha, which is definitely the one that I own. I also have Piranha 2, but Joe Dante didn't direct that one. Gremlins, and Gremlins 2, which I don't know why I don't own those, because as bad as Gremlins 2 is, it's fun to see a spider, gremlin, bat monster. And also Small Soldiers, which I don't like much now, but when I was younger, it was a fun movie. I don't know how that's a kid's movie with all the weird stuff with the Barbies and stuff in it. Makes sense for Joe Dante to make that. Doesn't make sense for them to market it to kids. The biggest name I would say in this movie, just bar none, is Dee Wallace. She's the mom in almost everything in the 80s, it feels like. Her most notable role is, of course, E.T., where she plays the mom. One of my personal favorite movies is Critters, where she plays, guess what? A mom. It's pretty good. She's in the new series that came out, or I don't know if they consolidated it into a movie. I didn't watch that one. I own the rest of them. Pretty much only like the first two. The rest can go fuck themselves. But more importantly for this review, she's the cheating wife / mom in Cujo. And the only reason that is relevant at all is because her character's husband is Christopher Stone, who was the person that she was cheating on the dad in that movie with. And the other fun thing is they were married in real life. So it makes sense later in this movie why they seem so natural together, since they're actually together. So that's pretty cool. I don't know him in anything else, except this movie apparently and Cujo. But then we got Dick Miller, the bit actor master of everything. He's in so many movies. He's in A Bucket of Blood, which is the same set as The Little Shop of Horrors, the OG one. He sells guns to Arnold in The Terminator. He's the neighbor in Gremlins. Night of the Creeps, he's in there. He's pretty much everywhere. Chopping Mall, he's in that too. Dick Miller, great actor. He should have been in more things as leads, because his attitude in pretty much everything that he's in is amazing and great, and I love it. But I don't see the big hubbub that I seem to see in documentaries and best movies. Yeah, it has a really fun transformation scene, and that's most of it. I didn't like this one as much as I feel like I should have. And part of the reason for that is this movie has kind of like an ebb and flow of interesting, because the title screen makes you hyped, ready for the movie. Let's do this. It's great. And then we get boring stuff. To me, you might not find it boring. And then a thing happens that we'll get to later. And then the movie's exciting again for a few minutes. Then it goes back to being blah, and then it's exciting again. Once it gets into its groove, pretty much halfway through the movie is fun ride. But getting to that fun ride is, I don't know, it was just boring to me. We'll get into that. I'm going to go through the overview here in a minute, but then after the overview, I'm going to propose a different way they could have made the movie that I think would have been a better story. But just remember, it's always easy to criticize something that's already happened than being able to do it in the moment. But my changes they wouldn't necessarily change the budget at all, so it's weird that they did it this way. I don't know. We'll see if you guys agree with what I said. So this one's I appreciate the parts that everybody appreciates to a certain extent, but as a movie as a whole, I don't know how it got 37 sequels that are dumber than this, because I've watched reviews on the sequels, not this one, and those are a lot more crazy with their ideas than this is. But this one could have been a great movie if they would have just moved some stuff around, and we'll get into that after I do the overview, so everybody knows what I'm talking about. Alright, spoilers now. Leave if you don't want them. Stay if you want to hear my opinion about certain parts of this movie. So the opening is slash marks on black screen, and I only bring this up because it was cool looking, and then there's wolves howling in the background, and these slash marks spell out the howling. And then remember in Friday the 13th 1 or 2, can't remember which one, they broke the glass where the title screen was. It's done differently in this movie, but I feel like it's done better in this movie. It looks really cool, so I'm hyped and excited. And then we get into the beginning credits, which is fine. That's allowed to be boring. But you can hear exposition in the background that's explaining this whole part that I'm going to summarize basically, because it's like 20 minutes of a movie that didn't need to be 20 minutes of a movie. Basically, for this first part, before we get into the fun part of the movie, we'll give you a little summary and then I'm going to give you some highlights. So the summary is Dee Wallace is a reporter that has been contacted by a serial murderer of some description, and she's wired up by the cops, and she's gonna go find him, and the cops are gonna save her, and then things go wrong. That's his first beginning part. It takes forever, and literally the only thing that it does is traumatize the character, which is what it was supposed to do, and show you all of the characters that are involved in this movie, at least at the reporter station, but there's like better ways to do it. I'll get into that part later. We go to the new studio after that exposition part. We see their friends that are part of the new station too, but I think they're doing a documentary, but I don't know how they're like friends. I didn't pay attention enough or something. And we get to see the doctor, and I'm just going to call him Doc because he's a main character, kind of side character. He's in the movie the whole time. That's what I'm trying to get at. And that's just to show us that he's a doctor that works with psychos, and he's one of the people that are trying to catch this one that's the serial murderer. And then we realize that Dee's going into basically the red light district of whatever city they're in that they probably told me, but I didn't pay attention to. And she goes into around here, our establishment's called the Brown Bag Video, but it's basically a porn shop that has a movie theater in it to watch porn. And she goes into the movie theater part, and everybody else leaves except for one guy. And that's the guy we're looking for. And she's been freaking out up to this point about this because she's about to get murder raped. And there's some for the time, some hardcore BDSM stuff going on in the movie, but it's like a rape scene because parallels and whatnot. And he starts to have a voice modulator, and you can't really see his face, and she freaks out, and the cops shoot him dead. He's dead. But this traumatizes her into having amnesia about the situation, which makes sense for what we learn later. But her husband in this movie, his name's Bill. I don't remember what her name in the movie is, but his name's Bill, so we're going to call him Bill. He's probably the best husband in the world, especially for the time, because she has PTSD about the whole situation, and he just comforts her. They try to have sex at one point, and then she's freaking out, and he instantly stops, no questions asked, good to go. Pretty much everything he can do to help her, he does. And the friends I was talking about, they're like our side quest people in this movie, where their quest technically has to do with the movie, but if it wasn't in the movie, it wouldn't hurt anything either, really, to a certain extent. They go to his name's Eddie the Mangler. They go to Eddie's apartment, and he's got drawings of Dee Wallace as a werewolf, or a transforming werewolf. He's got wolf masks. He's got landscape drawings. He's got a bunch of different werewolf drawings. Did you know that The Howling was about werewolves? Because if it was supposed to be a surprise, they fucking ruined the surprise with the opening credits. And this isn't a knock on the movie. It just pisses me off, and I have to do my little PSA. She gets startled because it's a guy and a girl. That's the friends. And while they're looking around, she gets startled by a dog. And the only reason I bring this up is because it wasn't like a Doberman or a Rottweiler or a Pit Bull, but they filed its teeth down, and I hate that. It's just train the dog better. And this is a movie dog, so it's obviously trained. There's no reason to file your dog's teeth down at all. If they get out or they get lost, now for your comfort, they can't survive as good in the wild until they get back to you. That's my own pet peeve rant about stupid people doing stupid things to animals over. Anyway, they bring all of these pictures that they found, or copies of these pictures that they found, drawings that they found, to the doctor, talk to him about it. He's like, yeah, psychos do that sometimes. And this is where the PTSD no sex thing comes in. Her boss is a straight dickhead. He puts her on air, and it could have been a day, could have been 2 days. I don't know. This movie's not good at telling you how long things happen. So they're going to have her tell her side of the story when she's obviously not ready to. And she freezes because of the lights. It reminds her of the movie light. She totally freezes up. She's catatonic. And the boss blames it on maybe she's pregnant because he's a piece of shit, and he's an asshole the whole time. And she does a thing that annoys me about people that have been victimized, and it sounds weird to say it like that, but she apologizes for freezing, and it's no lady, everyone else should be apologizing to you for making you be in this situation. It's not your fault that you didn't realize that your brain was still too broken to talk. Once again, nothing to do with the movie, it's just people do that in real life, and it kind of bothers me. I know why, but it's in this situation, you don't have to apologize. We get it. But after that, she meets up with the doctor, and they joke around. They're friendly with each other, making jokes about how crazy she is because of the situation. And he decides that she could go to the colony with his other patients to try to get her mind off of it. By the way, it's about 20 minutes into this movie, and the colony is where the good part of the movie takes place. So this whole 20 minutes could have been shortened to like 10, and we could have had more stuff at the colony, which is what I would like. Expand more on why later. And they do a little fun jokes. They have fun, stupid jokes. Like, while they're driving up to the colony, she's like, I hope they're not a bunch of weirdos. And the first thing you see is they're all a bunch of weirdos at a beach party with like a spit roast with like a rotisserie cow on it, I think. I don't know why it had to be a cow, not like a pig. It was cow. And this is where we learn that Bill doesn't like meat. That's important for later. Then they get separated at this party. One of the girls, or one of the women in the weirdos, takes Dee away to show her around the place. And then they zoom in on this old guy for fucking ever, and he like freaks out a little bit. And it's like, are you just wasting time? Because it feels like you're just wasting time. Because what happens in a couple minutes here doesn't make sense with what happens at the end of the movie. After that nonsense, we catch up with Bill, and he's trying to get a drink, and the person that's giving out the drinks is this nymphomania goth girl. I say goth, she's just dressed in black. She might not be goth. She tries to get a little, and Bill just rejects the hell out of her. There's a scene later where it shows him looking, and the editing makes it maybe look like he was thinking about it, but nothing he does makes me feel like he was thinking about it, which makes him, in my mind, a good husband. Movie husband, not real husband, obviously. Because if it was a movie husband that wasn't good, they'd have been fucking back at somebody else's bungalow right there. Some more things happen, and the doc and the goth girl don't see eye to eye. Like, the treatment method isn't working for the goth girl, and the doc is pushing it. Old guy tries to kill himself by jumping into a fire, which won't make sense later. We're in Bill and Dee's bungalow, and they show some creepy shots of the woods. If there's one thing this movie does really, really well, it's have creepy shots of the woods with fog machine going. And I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. I love me some fog machine with some creepy lighting at night in a forest. That's some good shit right there. And they do that a ton in this movie. I'm not going to bring it up every time they do it. Just know that they do it, and it's great to see. Then she hears the titular howling, and it's definitely a wolf mixed with some stuff. She gets scared, wakes up Bill. Bill's like, dude, it could have been anything. You've never left the city. Calm down. Let's go to bed. Which is like normal, I would assume. Someone to say. It sounds like something I would say. I probably would have stayed up with her, though. That's just me. Then we get a POV shot going up to the front door of their bungalow, and she goes outside and gets scared again. She finds a piece of fabric that never comes up again, or if it does, I didn't see it. And we get to see, I'm pretty sure we get to see somebody in the bushes watching the house at this point. But it's just a creepy guy from the party. She tells the sheriff about what happened. They seem to think it's a coyote, and she's like, it definitely wasn't, probably not. Then we cut to the friends, and they're at the morgue because they want to look at Eddie's body. And when they go look at Eddie's body, once again, he's obviously come back to life as a werewolf because the morgue drawer is all clawed up with blood everywhere. It's like, it's obviously a werewolf. That night, Dee is talking with her neighbor bungalow lady, and they hear a bunch of sounds of cows, and Dee's like, don't they sound weird? And the lady's like, I don't know what cows are supposed to sound like. And then Dee's like, not like that. So we got some murdered ass cows. And while they're looking at these murdered cows, they run into the sheriff, and then that's when the sheriff is like, it wasn't no damn coyote. We got wolves. In the morning, Bill, with the rest of the guys pretty much at the colony, go hunting for this wolf. Dee goes to a session with the doc. And in this session, in my opinion, and I am no therapist, but I know one, they push her to talk too much, in my opinion. Like, you ask, you let her think about her thoughts, maybe you ask again, but they're just like, remember, you need to remember. What happened? What do you look like? Remember, until she screams, I can't remember. They need to calm it the fuck down. Then we go back to the hunt. Bill shoots a rabbit for a shot. It's like setting him up to be the sharpshooter for no fucking reason. The friends go to an occult bookstore, or an occult store, it's just mostly books, and Dick Miller runs the place, and he is our exposition man. He tells us all about werewolves, everything we need to know. He's the one that has the silver bullets that are going to be important later. And he's just great. I spent a whole movie of him just talking. If he would have narrated a documentary, that'd be great. But besides that, it's a fun scene. Anything with Dick Miller is good to go. Now, Bill doesn't eat meat, but he shot a rabbit. Because he wasn't thinking ahead, like, what do I do with this rabbit? Even though he could have just gave it to anybody at the compound and they could have cooked it. It doesn't make any sense. But creepy guy, who is the brother of Goth Girl, tells Bill to take the rabbit to Goth Girl. And Bill's a goddamn dumbass for saying yes to this because she already tried to fuck ya. What do you think she's going to do alone in her bungalow? Dumbass. But I will say, first time I watched this, right after they're like, my sister will cook it for you good. She'll be alright. And he's like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, it'll be fine. This is definitely not a trap. The next cut is with a cleaver, and when it hit the cutting board to cut the bunny's tail off, it just made me do one of those, ugh. It doesn't happen very often. I don't know why it happened. But it did. She full on kisses, like forcefully kisses on him, and you could say that he didn't push her off fast enough, but just because he's confused doesn't mean he's not holding his mouth shut. We don't know. Pushes her off. He's dumb for even going there. I already said that, but super fucking dumb. This part sucks, because as he's going back to his bungalow, he gets scratched / bit. I think he gets scratched, but they call it a bite. And that made me sad. I liked Bill. He was a great husband, but he's not going to be great anymore, because you know what happens when you get bit by a werewolf. You become a piece of shit, for the most part. The doc patches Bill up. They want to leave, but the doc convinces him to stay because the bite might get worse, and it'd be better not to transport him. Which is complete bullshit, but hey, movie's got a movie. This is when Dee decides to call her friends who are watching werewolf movies because they're obsessed with werewolves now. And the lady friend comes to the place to comfort her. And they spend some time together. The guy's finishing up business and then he's going to be down or up. Don't know the geographical locations of these two places. And then we cut to Bill. Well, before that, they're talking and it's supposed to be like character development. Like, I think Bill might want to cheat on me with Marcia, the goth girl. And it's like, this place is weird. And then the friend's like, why would you think that? It seems fine. Nicer than I said it, but that's the gist of what happened. Then we see Bill eating meat for the first time, and the friend's like, I forgot you don't eat meat. And then he's like, you know me, if I'm hungry enough, I'll eat anything. And my only problem with this is nobody comments on it. Dee doesn't go, what the fuck? I've never seen you eat meat in your entire life. Or anything while he's chewing on some meat. He's got like a rib in his mouth. I don't know. That's part of my complaints with this movie. There's a whole lot of like almost moments that don't actually materialize. It's kind of weird. Now, Dee wants to get her some, and he just doesn't, because he's bit on the arm now, and other reasons. She has this really weird fucking dream that I'm not even going to try to tell you about. Just know that it's straight odd. But when she wakes up from this nightmare, Bill's gone. Bill went to go have sex with the goth girl. These two people start having sex and turning into werewolves while they're being serenaded by wolf howls. She ends up scratching him on the back after she's mostly transformed. It goes on for way longer than I thought, but it ends in such an awesome way, in such a sarcastic tone. It's basically cartoon werewolves having sex, which probably should be doggy style, but it was missionary because I don't think movies are allowed to shoot doggy style for some reason, because weirdos. Just would have made some more sense because they're turning into wolf people. But it's like hilarious how cartoony it looks, but in a fun way. After he gets back from that epicness, he does feel bad that he did it. But I don't really blame him anymore because his baser instincts are fucked now because he's a werewolf. That's why it made me sad, because I knew shit was going to go down, and I like them as a couple. The lady friend is just out because they're doing a documentary on murderers, so she's working while she's helping. And she looks around and she figures out that Eddie is from the colony by some of the landscapes he drew. She finds the real landscape. She sees this other bungalow that's abandoned, and this is going to only matter to me because I have an affinity for snakes. The name of this podcast is The Genus and Species of Snake. There's like a big fake snake head. It's just hanging there like he killed it, but it's not the right color to be any snakes that get that big. It's weird. I'm the only one that would mention that. We find out that it's Eddie's bungalow, and about the time we find that out, she gets attacked by a werewolf in this house, and this werewolf's breaking down doors and stuff. It's kind of fun. She gets a hatchet at some point, chops its arm off, and then its arm, as a werewolf, like rolls up, like, you know, one of those party things where you blow on it and it like rolls out and then rolls back up. Well, the arm rolled back up and then it rolled back out and turned human. That freaked her out a lot. It was fun to see too. That werewolf pussed out like a bitch though and just leaves. But we learned earlier that they can regenerate in a couple days, so it's like, what the hell? The only way to kill these things is with a silver bullet, as far as we know. And then she gets away and she runs to the doc's place. We get back to Dee and Bill, and she notices the scratches. It starts this fight. Bill hits her, which was apparently perfectly fine in the 80s to do. Violence is fun, but she gives a piece of her mind that isn't really substantiated with the way they shot the movie, but it actually is because that's what happened in the movie. I'll explain that later. It's one of the things that bothers me. Then she's like, fuck this, I'm going to the doc's house because I can't be here anymore. Here's a gripe about these werewolves. These werewolves are... The human part of their brain is in complete control. I mean, they had to work to get that way, but they are that way. And it's kind of dumb to me. Like, this werewolf is like turning on recorders and shit just to fuck with people as a werewolf. And like, she's looking through files, the friend is at the doc's place, and when she finds Eddie's file, the werewolf takes the file from her as if it was a human. And then it takes about 2 hours to bite her in the neck. But during this whole situation, right before she gets bit on the neck, she is calling the guy friend. They're together. She's on the phone with them, and she's like, hey, werewolves are real. He hears the disturbance over the phone. We find out that Doc's a part of this whole thing. We get a scene with Dick Miller again where he's like, you need to pay for those, damn it, when guy friend grabs the silver bullets from the occult store because he believes his girlfriend. Now we get to see zombie Eddie as a human taunting Dee, and we get our werewolf transformation. The titular one. The one that everybody loves in a werewolf movie. Is at least one of the transformations have to look good. The last werewolf movie we did forgot that. This one doesn't. This one probably set the precedent, to be honest. It's a really long transformation. It takes forever. It's fun, and the practical effects are pretty fun. Watching a dude's face stretch out into a wolf face, and his fingers grow long with claws and stuff. It's really cool. My only gripe about it is they use the bladder underneath the fake skin effect to make like bubbly skin. Now, if those would have popped and there would have been like fur underneath of him, then I would have liked it. But it's like his skin's just boiling for the transformation. But since this transformation takes about approximately 2 to 3 hours, and they can't do anything while they're transforming except transform, Dee finds a jar of acid, and it is about 1,000 times more effective than pocket sand. If you get what I'm talking about there, then you got it. As she escapes, human versions of the colony just grab her. They have her. That's when we learn that literally every single person in the colony is werewolf, which is fine. I'm fine with that. And they're trying to convince Dee to be a werewolf as well. And to be fair, these werewolves probably the best werewolves you could be, because you could choose to never transform ever if you ever wanted to. And then even when you are transformed, you can just like hang out, play Nintendo as a werewolf. But she's not having any of this. There's a dispute between Doc and pretty much everybody else. The Doc's like, we need to stay hidden. We need to gather our numbers because the world has advanced and we have not because there's so little of us. And everybody else is like, yeah, but we're werewolves. Let's go kill everybody. And I'm like, yeah, but you made your werewolves too smart for that kind of thing. We go back to Doc's place because friend Guy gets there. Eddie has some pretty fun melted face effects. Like you can see his bone because his eyes like melted out because of the acid splash. And he starts to transform into a werewolf and just gets shot twice and dies because this dude's packing the silver and he didn't realize that. They're about to kill Dee because she won't decide to join him. Bill's on board 100%. He's like, I got Claude, good to go. But you don't see him for this whole end. It's almost like he couldn't be a part of the end of the movie because they only show like him later. It's weird. But Guy comes in, friend Guy comes in with these silver bullets and he's just like shooting them down. Ba-blam, ba-blam, ba-blam. And he's got a lot of bullets. So he scares them up a little bit. And then they all start to transform. And they all get shuffled into a barn because they can't literally do anything while they're transforming, it would appear. And they burn the barn down when he had enough bullets to cap all of them before they were done transforming. Weird fucking choice. In the scuffle of them escaping and killing more of the werewolves, because once they transformed, they broke out. Like, maybe a couple died in that fire. Maybe. But they kill the sheriff because he's a werewolf. All the werewolves are around the car. They finally get the car going, and they haul ass, but Bill got inside, bit Dee, and then Dee shot Bill, and it's kind of sad. Some of them live, obviously, and it's awesome stop-motion funness, just them walking around. The stop-motion model doesn't fit the practical model, but hey, what you can do. It looked fun. It was a fun shot. This is when they decide to let everybody know that werewolves are real. So Dee goes on air, starts to wolf out, and friend Guy shoots her, puts her down. Some people believe it, some people don't. It's one of those kind of endings, and we end off with a dumb joke that I was like, stupid. They're at a bar discussing whether it was real or not, and it pans over to Marcia, the goth girl, and they're like, how do you want your hamburger? And before she said it, I'm like, rare? And then she's like, rare. And I'm like, ha 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 ha, funny. Anyway, that's the end of the movie. The end credits come while a hamburger is being cooked. And I got a fix for this movie. I mean, at least it would make it more entertaining in my perspective. Because we have that whole beginning part that took 20 minutes. If they would have just traumatized her right in the beginning, so that horrific scene of her going into the sex shop, like they could have played that right after the opening credits. That part got her traumatized within like 5-10 minutes, have her amnesia, and then we could have spent more time in the colony. And like they tell us that like Bill's sniffing up that girl's butt, but they don't show us Bill sniffing up that girl's butt. If they would have shaved off the beginning half to shoot more scenes at the end half, it would just be a more fleshed out characters. I think it would have worked way better because then we could see him fall into the werewolf madness of, I don't care about this, I'm going to eat meat now, all that stuff. They could have shown us it, like the progression to it, not just the end result. Everything in this movie seems like after a bunch of off-screen character development, and then we get to see what happens at the end. And if they'd have cut down that beginning part that literally does nothing, it shows us the people she works with, but they could have just shown us all those guys when she went on air to freak out to see the doctor to go to the colony anyway, and that would have just established everybody. Because she could have got traumatized, and we could have saw a little bit more of her at home, freaking out, man. Because there's like one scene of her at home freaking out, and then it's like, go on air, talk to the doc, go to the colony. They could have just literally traumatized, home life, on air, doctor, within less than 20 minutes, and then bam, rest of the movie, fun, creepy werewolf stuff with howls. Different creative ways to do the howling part of the Howling. I'm aware that this is a book of some description, but I don't care about that. So if they did it in the book this way, the book sucks too. Probably not as much as the movie. But also, they made Eddie a werewolf from the colony, and they really didn't have to. He could have just been a guy that was obsessed with werewolves and just had the friends follow up on the werewolf stuff to get in the mind of Eddie because they were trying to do like an editorial on him or whatever, or a documentary. They could have just went to the occult store and done all that stuff, and Eddie didn't have to be a werewolf. It's like, why was he a werewolf? There was no like, if there was a good payoff, like the only payoff we got is he was the one that we saw the full transformation. But it never had to be him. He could have had the wolf mask on, so when she saw it, she's like, all I could see was a wolf or something. Or she could have not had amnesia and just said it was a werewolf, but it wasn't really. It was just a guy in a mask because he was transformed into killer. And since they have the same mindset, whether they're a werewolf or a human, he was going to do whatever he wanted. And she was going to be a bloody stain on the floor. It's like, I think it would have worked better from a psychological standpoint if she didn't see what she thought she saw. More than amnesia. But even if she did, she could have been seeing Eddie and all these things she's seeing because of the real werewolves, which would throw us off that there was real werewolves in the fucking movie. Like, it could have been called The Howling because that's what her brain imagined after seeing him in some of those wolf masks and stuff. So then we don't know if werewolves are real. But in this movie, it's like it beats you over the head that werewolves are real. Like, the whole entire movie, it's like, they are real, which doesn't make very good, like, I don't know how to say it. It's not very compelling is what I'm getting at. It's really hard to sit through the beginning boring part when you know 100%, even if you haven't heard of anything about this movie, you're going to pick werewolves between the name, the cover, and everything else it does. It's like, they could have just made it a psychological thing where she's afraid of, like, wolves or something. I don't know. I had a more concise way to plan out this movie before I started recording, but it kind of gobbledygooked by the end. I think I meandered enough for y'all to get. I just wanted more character building moments is all. I like to get invested in my characters before they get murdered because then it actually makes me feel things. That's probably why I don't watch a whole lot of slashers, because you don't really care about any of the characters except for maybe one. Then they all get slashed away. And you're like, it was fun, but there was no investment for me. Anyway, that has been this episode of Nausea Reviews. If you like the intro or the outro, you can check the description. He's cheap. He does pretty good work. I recommend him. He'll work with you. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.